So today I have the pleasure of talking to Phil DeGreg, Cincinnati-based jazz pianist who will be leading his trio at the next Louisville Jazz Society Signature Series concert on Sunday, May 28th at 7 p.m. It's at the Cafe, which is 731 Brent Street, next to Paristown Hall. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today, Phil, and tell us a little about your career and the upcoming Louisville Jazz Society Signature Series concert.
Oh, let's see. Career.
So before you became a professional musician, I was reading that you were psychology. You got to earn a psychology degree at Yale.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know why you made the decision to make music and jazz your career.
Well, I kind of fell into the degree. It took me a long time to realize that I wanted to play music. And I think part of that is, parental messages like, don't do that. And, they wanted, I have a brother and a sister, and then my parents wanted us all to be doctors and lawyers, and my older brother's a lawyer, and my younger sister's a doctor. So we all went to, really good schools. Like, my sister went to University of Chicago. My brother went to Columbia. I went to Yale. And I just, the psychology was really sort of a degree by default because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do, but I also hadn't had that much serious music preparation. I didn't take any lessons or anything when I was a kid, so I wasn't qualified to do a music degree. So it kind of all worked its way out, eventually I kind of went where I went, but it wasn't a conscious decision like, oh, I think I want to play jazz. It was just sort of like I was doing it. I was interested in it. And when I first began to actually was on my own and began to make a living just playing music, and I just gravitated toward jazz because that's what I loved. So that's what I went.
So after you sort of found what you wanted to do, you ended up at the University of North Texas in the jazz program there, right? So
yeah.
how did that shape your playing and your career?
Well, when I went to University of North Texas, it wasn't right out of college. I was out for 3 years, just sort of playing and learning how to be a musician, taking lessons, quite earnest, really working at it. And then I ended up going down there because I just thought it would be a great place to hang around. I thought it would be really great to go to school and study music, and North Texas was the place that appealed to me a lot, and so I went there and did a very leisurely 3-year master's degree. Wasn't really thinking about it for teaching. It's just that I already had a bachelor's degree, and I didn't see any point in doing another bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So it worked out great, and so that's how I ended up there. It was great to see.
Did you have like long-term musical connections coming out of there?
So yeah, I mean, I got a gig on the Woody Herman band from doing that. Which was a lot of people with colleges. When those bands were traveling, I think a lot of the bands pulled from colleges. North Texas was one of them. University of Miami was one. Eastman was another. And the way it worked was that when there was an opening on a traveling big band like that, somebody would give a recommendation. They were all young generally because it paid so little money. You couldn't get somebody out that. And I did Woody for just about a little under a year. I couldn't afford it, and I knew it was going to be because I already had a kid, and
right.
It's like I was just losing money every month, but it was good. It was great, and
kind of a trial by fire.
Well, the way those gigs work, you show up. I mean, the way it worked on Woody's band was basically somebody was recommended, they showed up, played it, and then if they didn't do a good enough job, then they got sent home, I guess. But I didn't get sent home. I chose after about almost 11 months the time that I was just going to stop. So I played my last gig at Dayton, Ohio, because the rule was if you got fired, they bought you a ticket, but if you quit, then you had to get off the road and find your way home. So I waited until we were in my own vicinity. That's to be leaving was when we played in Dayton, Ohio, which is 50 miles from Cincinnati. So Cincinnati was my home, and I got I just got off the road there, and then started working in Cincinnati, and then eventually a part-time gig opened up at the conservatory. I didn't,
Right.
and I didn't even know that I was going to stay in Cincinnati, but this part-time gig opened up, and it turned into a full-time job. And then I went through all the ranks of everything. And I retired in 2015, but I was there 27 years.
Wow.
So,
So that's what I'm going to ask you next. Is you played all over the country, but you've made Cincinnati your home base. So other than
yeah,
the conservatory, what's made Cincinnati an attractive place to play and live?
well, it's very comfortable to me. There's a good scene here. There's a very good music. There's way too many good piano players, to be honest, for a town. There's just a lot. There's a fair amount of activity. I mean, it's a good regional kind of city to play in. I think I mean Louisville's good too. I think, but
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know well. Um, and so with the teaching job, it just kind of kept me here because I didn't really. It was something I didn't want to walk away from. I teaching, and I should also mention, of course, and everybody down there knows, Jamie Aebersol was a big part of my life. I would have never. I mean, I went to one of his clinics earlier on as a student. I was living in Kansas City for 3 years between college at Yale and North Texas, and I went to some of his workshops, and that's how I found out about North Texas, and I found out about so much stuff, and really, his many people have this story. I'm sure his presence has had a big effect on my life in general in a lot of different ways. So I'm always grateful to Jamie. I mean,
Mhm.
you all know he's a national treasure right there in Louisville, and he's
Yeah.
so important to your jazz scene, of course.
Yeah. That's my son's first experience too, was playing at his camps as well.
Right,
So
right. And I ended up teaching at them for actually I taught for 36 years. They're done now, but I did it for that long. Yeah.
cool. You played at the Blue Wisp for a long time too, didn't you? The club in
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
hmm That kind of coincided with um, my getting the full time gig at the university. It sort of happened all at the same time, which was great because then I could afford it.
Right.
Playing dance club like that, and the money's not great, but the playing experience, and I had a really wonderful house rhythm section, and we played behind all sorts of people that would come through. It was a great experience.
Right.
Uh, but it's like I said, if the university helped, I mean, help me afford to be able to do that.
Right. Well, I was looking at your website and the list of people you played with. You played with so many different folks.
Yeah, a lot of people came through.
Anybody stand out?
Oh, I don't know. Gosh, yeah. Well, just all wonderful. I remember playing with not Slide Hampton, the J.J. Johnson. I got to play with him. I remember that very well. Eddie Harris, I thought he was um, and yeah, those are the main ones. Those are some of the bigger names. I loved playing with Scott Hamilton when he would come through. I think he's
Oh, yeah.
perfect. So but a lot of different kinds of players, and I just happened to be, it worked out that I was able to do it there. So
Great. So teaching's obviously been a big part of your career. You've been just recently retired from the conservatory, the
not
CCM.
that it's been since 2015. So
Wow,
it's
is that long? Wow.
yeah.
So at some point I'll be able to say the same thing too, but
I hope so. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
wonderful thing. I got to say. Yeah.
So how has been a teacher shaped your playing and your career?
Well, it's been a parallel career. I think teaching and playing are really two different skill sets. And some people are a lot better than one or the other. I feel like I'm reasonably good at both. And so that it worked out. Um, and, that, I mean, teaching at a university, it was a full time job. So it took a lot of time. And,
Mm.
sometimes I think to myself, well, I might be in a different musical place if I dedicated all that time to just working and practicing music rather than talking about it. But that's
Right.
water. I mean, now I'm probably practicing and working on music more consistently now since I retired, and I feel like I'm improving more. And that's my main focus is just try to learn how to play the damn piano. It's not
After all these years.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's always stuff to work on, and I'm doing a lot of projects up here in Cincinnati. Besides just playing the local gigs, I've got a couple steady things, and I'm also put on a bunch of concerts every year at a church where sometimes you get people from out. I'm part of an organization called the excuse me, Cincinnati Contemporary Jazz Orchestra, and it's a nonprofit, and it presents concerts. I'm in their big band, which does at least 6 or 8 concerts a year, and then
Mm.
I've got small group series, and we do them at the Unitarian Church, and then so I get people in from out of town. I got a lot of friends that New York people, and if get them enough stuff to do, then get them to come into town. I play well. Jim Snydero, for instance. I'm going to play in the fall. I'm going to do a concert at the church with his strings record. We're not going to make any money on that one. We'll see how close we can get to breaking even. But because we're hiring like 12 string players, but the organization's doing okay. We get some donations in this.
Right.
So anyway, uh, yeah. So there's plenty. I've always found plenty of things to do around here. There's always activities.
That's
So
great. I was listening to your most recent, I think it's your most recent record, the 2022 record, My Little Song.
yes, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I did.
it's
Tim Reed,
it's
the guy that I went to college with in North Texas.
well, it's a great record, but I was really struck by your description of kind of your inspiration for it. And you wrote, like many jazz players, I've been perpetually haunted by the reality that my musical heroes make music at a level I can only aspire to reach. And as I said earlier, last time I saw you, you made that out-of-tune piano in New Albany sound spectacular. I was really struck by the modesty of it, but I was wondering about what does it mean to you to play your own little song?
Well, that was just, I mean, the title of that came from I mean, it literally was that. When you're playing, when you're just trying to play something that is not necessarily going to be impressive to anybody, but just trying to play something honest that you can hear and that you can do, that turns out to be, the best musical thing that I think that you can do. And so, like I said, I grew up, I didn't have a lot of piano training. I've been like basically struggling my whole life with trying to acquire, the kind of technique, that would help, to do things. And, I said, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't be like this, but at least I can play my own little song. That's sort of the way I was thinking about it.
Right. Well, you've been bluffing it pretty well then.
Yes, I mean, I love playing music. I love playing music for people.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of, I mean, around here, I do not a lot. I would say maybe 2 or 3 a month. I'll play at retirement homes for people. And I love it because you're making a connection with people. You can affect them. And that's what music is supposed to be about in the end.
Yeah.
I think I get more satisfaction playing in an intimate setting. Not that I've done a lot of, with Woody, we would do some concerts and festivals and be on big stages where it's all very, and generally speaking, I didn't get that much satisfaction out of doing that because, the sound was always weird. But you're also kind of detached. It's like you and then this, bunch of people out there. I'd rather play in more intimate settings where I feel like, and even if it's a retirement place. I mean, people and play music for people. That's to me what
Right.
it's about.
You can make that connection.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Yeah. Well, you recorded that record with your longtime trio. It's Aaron Jacobs and John Taylor. But
That's right.
for the Louisville Jazz Society Signature Series concert, you'll be playing with Matt Wiles on bass
Mhm.
and Kiko Cibrian on drums. Can you tell me a little bit about your sidemen and how they're
Okay,
influencing what
so
you're doing?
so Kiko, I'm a big fan of Brazilian music, and actually, I initially got into Brazilian music through Mike Tracy, who you all know there. And this
Right,
was time goes back in the '90s. And but Kiko, we had an exchange program as we did with that U of L. We had this exchange program and it brought a bunch of students back and forth from Brazil to both the conservatory where I taught and University of Louisville. And we Kiko was one of those students. So and then he came back and he eventually did a master's degree at University of Louisville,
yeah,
and he's been in the area. And I just love playing Brazilian music with a Brazilian drummer, especially because they do. So what the concert we're going to do for the Jazz Society is going to be essentially Brazilian jazz. I'm interested in the crossover of Brazilian popular music and jazz. And I've Kiko's been coming up to Cincinnati quite regularly to play with me once a month. There's a little club in downtown Cincinnati and over the Rhine area called Schwartz's Point, and he comes up. The money's not great, but he's willing to come up. Just wants to play. And we played this the other night, and we have a great time. So I love playing with Kiko, and I love playing Brazilian music, especially with Kiko, because it's his native tongue
right,
as a musician, and
right.
it's hard to and so he puts up with me and my gringosity, but he's great. Now Matt Wiles is an electric bass player that's played with us several times there. He's not the regular guy. The regular guy is out of town completely. I have Aaron play. Matt's
Right.
done it. He's tremendous. There's a wealth of good musicians here in town. So Matt's going to be playing bass for that thing.
Great. Great. So what's he bring to the table?
He is a superb musician. Uh, he actually trained as a classical pianist, but he's one of the busiest bass players in this town, and he's just he's going to be playing electric bass. He's got ridiculous chops and everything. He's really great for this kind of music. And of the musicians, you can't always have get all the musicians that you necessarily call for the first time. But when I called him as a sub for him, he learned all of this stuff better than anybody. He understood. He just ate it up, and he feels tremendous. I mean, I love his playing. So he's very well known entity here in town. He plays with a lot of. Did you ever hear? Brandon Coleman, because he's originally from Kentucky,
Yeah,
guitar
heard of
player.
him. Yeah.
So he works with Brandon's band regularly, and so he's in the scene around here. He mixes. I mean, people mix around a little bit. Anyway, Matt is an extraordinary player. He's really gifted, and so we're gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Well, we've seen Kiko play at a couple of our signature series concerts. So it'll be great to hear Matt for the first time because he's never played for us down here in Louisville, at least that I know
Yeah,
of. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, well, Kiko, he lives down there. I thought that would be easy to have him play, since he's from that area. I
Yeah.
don't think I think of it as a chance to play with a really good Brazilian drummer. And he
Right.
happens. So
Well,
uh,
we're really looking forward to the show. And again, thanks for speaking with me today, Phil. It's been a real pleasure. Again, Phil DeGreg and his trio will be playing on Sunday, May 28th at 7 p.m. at the Cafe as part of the Louisville Jazz Society Signature Series. Again, it's going to be a great show. Really looking forward to it.
well, I really appreciate your speaking with me, and I hope a bunch of people will come out.
I hope so too.